Welcome to my review of Wild Dogs for the Series X, and this game is on a few different platforms. This game took me around 3 hours to beat, and the game is about an hour and a half long if you don't die. Based off of my edited run, I believe it's about an hour and a half of actual gameplay. It's a Contra style run and gun type of game, but it has multiple genres of gameplay, so it does switch it up a bit, and I'm going to illustrate that in the review and highlight some of those areas to give you an idea. I was surprised with how good this game was for a game I never heard of. I just discovered this. I think I saw some videos online, but the game is actually very, very good. And you have multiple different weapons that you can collect and swap between. I believe you can hold 2 different weapons at a time and swap between them on the fly. You can also take about 5 hits before you lose a life. And you can get health pickups every once in a while as well to get some of the life back. You also have, I believe, 3 default lives. So you have 3 lives to get to the next section. Generally, if you get to the next section, you can start from that section a few times with a few continues. Now, if you waste all your lives and all your continues, then you will have to go back out to the save screen and load the last stage you got to. But you can start at the beginning of the last stage you got to. You also have stages like this where you have to play as this dog and do these little puzzles where you gotta dodge some obstacles and hit a switch and shit like that. That does happen a few times in the game, and that is the weakest aspect of the game. But it's very short and it's never challenging or anything like that. So it's over pretty quick. But if I had to pick one weakest part of the game, it would be these little sequences. But you get the idea with this. I wanted to show it a little bit. But yeah, basically, the game has a very sneaky way of letting you continue. You pretty much, when you die, you got to make sure you don't press any buttons because it's set up in such a way that you'll miss it and you won't even see that there's a continue option. So when you die, make sure you don't hit anything and be ready to say yes that you want to continue, basically by hitting, I think it's A or B, one of the buttons. But just be ready for it because it's very sneaky. I didn't even realize this game had continues. I think when it initially released, it may not have. I think it was patched in later, but I'm not sure. But, once I realized the game had continues, I started making progress very quickly. But it did slow me down initially because I didn't even know I could continue. So you do get maybe 3 continues or something like that. But the stages can be pretty long. So you have, 3 lives in each continue and a few continues to beat a stage. Once you beat a stage, you can get all your lives and continues back by starting at the next stage. So it's not a problem once you do that. But the game is pretty forgiving with that. If it didn't have any continues, it would be a lot harder. So you also have scenes where you drive this mech. You can ride these mechs, and you can even fight bosses in the mech. So there's a nice variety. You'll see here there's a boss fight in the mech suit. So there's a nice variety of different types of boss fights, different types of mechanics. You have side-scrolling shooters, overhead shooter style mixed in. There's even a Battletoads style bike sequence where you have to dodge obstacles similar to how you did in the speed bike in Battletoads. So it does reference things like that. It's not nearly as hard as it was in Battletoads, but it's still a little bit of a challenging sequence. So now you have an overhead shooter that it switches to at some point. This is all just edited footage from various parts of the game, so it's all mixed. But yeah, this is the overhead shooter portion. There's a nice variety of different gameplay types. And this is the bike sequence. So you start off kind of just riding around, dodging shit, fighting shit on the bike, which is actually really cool. And then you have a little mini boss fight. And then once you defeat this boss, then you'll move on to an obstacle navigation sequence that's kind of like Battletoads speed bike stage. And then after that, there's a final boss for this whole stage, pretty much. But it's very well done. Homing missiles are one of the best overall weapons because they do decent damage and they always hit your target. So it's one of the best weapons to keep on hand. But the controls are very good. I believe you even have a double jump, but it plays very well. So this is the obstacle sequence. But much easier than the one in Battletoads. There's a large variety. It has kind of a Game Boy visual style, but of course much better graphics than Game Boy and of course widescreen, but it has a little bit of that look to it. You can switch out the color palettes too if you want to, but it doesn't really change the game at all. So now you will recognize this from Contra 3, this type of boss fight. So many references to a lot of action games, not just the Contra series, but a lot of different games. And now you have kind of a King of Monsters style fight, where it's like a one-on-one, fighting game style. And not all the one-off sequences where they try to mix up the gameplay are great, but they're a nice diversion from the regular action, just to switch it up a little bit. This is not one of the better ones because of such a huge hitbox of your character. You can take damage on so many parts of your robot because it's so long and large. But it's nothing too difficult, but it's a little irritating with the size of your character. But this is the boss fight that occurs in this sequence. It goes on for a while where you fight shit, and some of the shooter sequences are not really great because there's not really a lot of density in the enemies as far as constant action with the enemies. So there are some dry spots with that where you wait around for more enemies to come in. And so it's not, the shooter stages are not like top tier shooters or anything like that, but they're decently serviceable. But they're not, when it goes into one of these one-off sequences, it's not going to compete with the best sequences from similar games. But they're still pretty solid. And there are a lot of those sequences in the game, but the strongest part of this game is the side-scrolling, Contra-style gameplay, which is what most of the game is, luckily. So the game really succeeds at that. And this is the final phase of the final boss. The final boss is actually multiple forms. But I wanted to make this a quick review. I didn't want to, show too much of the game. But I think this gives a good idea of what you can expect. And it's a very good game. I would actually give the game an 8 out of 10. I thought it was very good. I mean, there's definitely aspects where the game could be better, but with the side-scrolling Contra gameplay, that's like top notch. That's up there with pretty much any of the Contra games, or any similar games like that. I would say, though I'd probably give the edge to something like the Metal Slug series in general. The better installments of that series, because those games are probably my favorite run and gun games with the amount of density and enemies and everything going on. But really good game. And I definitely recommend checking it out. If you have any questions, let me know. And thanks for watching.